ranking order after governor in regards to importance. We're talking food security, food safety. Those are all primary goals of the Department of Agriculture, and by follow that up with economic opportunity. And yeah, there's things that can be taught out there. Agriculture is a STEM pathway. I say that all the time. It is science, it's technology, it's engineering, it's all those things. It's math. And once we get our students acknowledging this, and for the most part, our community to understand that this is not just a hobby, that agriculture is a STEM pathway, I think we can grow West Virginia in a very unique way.
Yeah, that's important. Kent, anything to add to that?
Well, the Department of Agriculture is primarily a regulatory agency, and most people don't understand that. So if you eat from a safe, affordable, and abundant food supply, you really need to care about who your Commissioner of Agriculture is. The food, Bob's right, is on the food safety and all those other type of things. And then there's about 10% of what we call economic development. But at the Department of Agriculture, during my term, we've been able to change that mindset at the department because prior to myself, the previous commissioners were really being heavy-handed on the regulatory side. So what we did is we changed to an educate before regulate. So what we are doing now is we're helping producers that need the help conform to the laws, and most of them are federal laws, and that's very important. But that becomes then an economic engine. So, we took the regulatory side and made it an economic engine for the state of West Virginia, and then combine that with the way we remodeled the marketing division to a business development. We've seen a tremendous growth in agriculture in West Virginia over the last 4 years. I hope we'll have a chance to go into that with some questions that are as we move forward.
Sure.
But, they don't know. People don't know we do forest health. People love our beauty of our state and all that beautiful trees out there. There's a forestry department under Commerce, but we are responsible for the health of the forests in West Virginia.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think there are many people voting today that may not have a clear picture on what the Commissioner of Agriculture actually does. So I appreciate you both, adding some to that. And I think we should certainly talk about that as we're going through tonight, more of the things that role does encompass. Kent, let me ask you a question. We started out with COVID and kind of a lighthearted question, and I still try to tend to be what opportunities we have instead of playing a victim mentality. But COVID created some problems. But so to that fact, though, it's created some opportunities. And so from an agricultural perspective, what opportunities has COVID maybe opened up for our state here in West Virginia, where maybe we can take advantage of some of the shifting tastes of the public, or even some of the concerns that the COVID has exposed in terms of our supply chain, or maybe in larger, more populated areas?
Well, that's a great question. But first, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Department of Agriculture. They've done a tremendous job during this pandemic times. A lot of states shut down, and they shut the agricultural down. West Virginia, we were able to work with producers and our manufacturers in the food processing, which I call manufacturing jobs, really, in the state. And we didn't have to shut any down. We did not euthanize any poultry. We didn't euthanize any hogs. In fact, we brought more hogs in. We did not dump any milk from any of our dairy farms. And I worked with the United Dairy out of Charleston, and we got them waivers on weight limits so they could bring more raw milk in from out of state, get it into processing, and then get that processing of that milk at a little bit higher weight limit and get that out to the stores. So we saw in the initial some of the things drawing down, and that was because of the supply chain of the way agricultural products were developed. So we did not, and you can talk to most people, we did not see the same shortages that other states did. Did we have a drawdown? Yes, because 30% of the food people consumed were being consumed at restaurants and institutions. And when those shut down, there was a rush on the grocery stores. But we were able to meet that. So we got more milk into the grocery stores. We got more meat into the grocery stores. We didn't euthanize any chickens. And our main poultry processing plant in Moorfield was allowed to stay open, even though they had a few cases initially. I worked with the governor's office and the poultry plant to make sure that DHHR, the people overwatching COVID, weren't getting upset, and we were able to keep it open. And they haven't had an incident since March. So I'm very proud of the work this Department of Agriculture has done in keeping agriculture open.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's part of the question. I'm gonna follow back to you, Bob, with that just thing. We all saw the headlines of lots of pigs being slaughtered and food being wasted because maybe it couldn't fit in the machinery and those kind of things. I would be interested in what are some of the things, and Kent said, you know, we were able to avoid much of that, but what are some things as a commissioner should we be thinking about for future, not just pandemics, but other things that may expose challenges in our supply chain or our farming that we can maybe prevent in the future?
Oh, number one, you have to remember that the United States takes a very vertical approach in regards to processing meat commodities here in the United States. It's centrally located. The beef that's processed here, or excuse me, that's raised here is typically sent out to feedlots and to slaughter facilities in the Midwest. There's one in Canada, I believe another one in Oklahoma that produces a lot as well. So we need to really start becoming more self-reliant and start looking at a more regional approach to supplying our food chain. You know, here in West Virginia, we are in fact importing about 80% of our food that we consume. There's no reason for that. We have plenty of producers here in the state of West Virginia. We just need to give them the tools and the resources and the communication that's needed to make that next step. Again, we can do the same thing with produce. We can do the same thing with beef. Yeah, we had hogs coming into the state because we were, as West Virginians, we were helping out these farmers in Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and other places. I was one of those. My brothers and I all purchased hogs. His next door neighbor, my brother's next door neighbor, brought them in by the truckload. So he had a commitment for purchase before they came into the state of West Virginia. That in itself put the backlog that we have in our processing facilities, not just in West Virginia, but in north central West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Maryland. And I'm sure that was the case across Kentucky and southern West Virginia as well. So yeah, we kind of created the problem. We exasperated the problem, let's put it that way. But yeah, we need to get to a more regional approach. And I think that's the future role the Department of Agriculture needs to play, playing that mediator, getting these cooperatives up and running so that we have a collaboration in establishing these processing facilities here in West Virginia.
Yeah, so Kent, let's get, you guys doing great. I'm just walking right down the path of things that we've got in the list to talk about. And let's talk about the idea of these smaller farms. There seems to be at least some blip, a movement, maybe it's a blip, maybe it's an actual trend where folks are preferring their food from small local farms. And COVID really created a lot of demand for that at those times. So should we, or how can we as a small state with lots of small farmers capitalize on this movement potentially, or this trend? And what can you do, or should you do, or think you're planning to do as commissioner if you're reelected? Kent, that's to you.
Is that me or Bob? I had the first one last.
Sorry about that. Yep. Oh, can you hear me, Kent?
Yeah, it's Bob's turn. Go first. I went first on the last question.
Okay. All right, Bob, we'll let you go then.
Well, I apologize. I wasn't really paying attention to the question. A driver kicked in on my screen here, and I can't see you guys. I just trying to figure out what's going on here. It's
maybe my problem switching to yours. You'll see these flash with my monitors going off. But yeah, I'll ask the question again. And so Bob, this kind of leads to your answer. And thanks, Kent, for keeping me on task there. How can we? It seems like during the pandemic we had this demand, whether it's a trend or not, in local farm, local food. And folks coming to that, as opposed to maybe we had a problem in our industrial food system. And so do we believe, hey, this is really a trend? And if so, how can West Virginia capitalize on that with many our small individual farmers? And what do you feel is your role as the commissioner to either help incentivize that or help grow that here in West Virginia?
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. I believe it is. It's going to be something that's here to stay, so to speak. Folks are really looking at buying local. We've, for years, goodness gracious, back to Gus's time in the Department of Agriculture, we've had success in growing our farmers markets across the state of West Virginia. And it's taking one step further. Folks do really want access to fresh beef and pork and chicken and all those things. And they want it local. One of the things we have to do is facilitate a clearinghouse, so to speak, so that folks can maybe log into a particular link, and here's a list of providers where you can either buy it at the farm, or here's a farmer's market that's going to be set up selling this product. But we also want to try and grow those things. And I'm a big proponent of looking at things more of okay, these are small little pieces of the puzzle. Let's bring them together and let's look at the larger image. And that's where we need to go. Let's start pulling things together. Obviously, we lack the facilities to process the meat. But we have to step back and see if that's the case. Is it just a pandemic and what we're bringing into the state, or is there truly a lack of processing facilities? I'm saying it's a little bit of both. And what do we need to get it off the ground? Well, we need to have some conversations. There needs to be a collaboration between the Department of Agriculture and these guys who want to get into the processing of the business. But we also have to find a means to share in this cost that goes into establishing these facilities. It's very expensive. To have a USDA inspector is very costly for a project like that. And you want to be able to justify it. You want to make sure that there's going to be the animals being processed through that facility that will offset the cost and the maintenance of the facility. So a lot of conversations need to occur, and that's what I'm about. I'm about communication and asking the question, how can I help you?
Great. Ken, can you help us a bit about the small farms, the demand that seems to be going that direction?
Yes, I'm very proud. We started a lot of work that's helping West Virginia actually prior to the pandemic hitting. In 2018, we asked the legislature to give the Department of Ag more authority over the farmers markets. And Food and Farm Coalition just recently sent me a letter because we were getting the SNAP extension that's helping the farmers using COVID dollars because the farmers market saw a greater demand. And they used all their SNAP dollars, senior nutrition dollars up early on. And the governor did free up $100,000 more for the final fall through the end of the year. And that's great for our small farmers. But the farmers market, the point I'm trying to make is we've grown farmers markets in West Virginia from 108 in 2018, and I took office in 2017, to this past year, we had 227 farmers markets. So they were already planning on opening prior to the pandemic hitting. So some of the work we had done had set the stage. The cottage food bill reduced some of the barriers of getting into agriculture and into the farmers markets, particularly with non-hazardous foods that are canned and jarred, whether it be apple butter or honey, so that we reduced the regulations so that people had an idea for a product, they could get into it. Of course, then when COVID hit, that idea was already in place and we were already moving forward. We've been working very closely with the West Virginia Conservation Agency. I chair the State Conservation Committee. We're working on the health of the soils because it all starts with the health of the soil as we grow these foods back onto these smaller farms. We've instituted programs that help our cattle producers in a very wet year to make sure that there's a seeding program to cover that so there's no erosion of that soil. We also worked to subsidize during the drought time, getting more water tanks to the farmers so that they could have water for the farms when that was happening. We were there and ready. The state park, if you haven't gone to a state park farm to table dinner, which kind of got shut down a little bit this summer, that was my idea, my initiative, using the Farmers Market Association and the state park cooks and the Department of Agriculture Business Development. We brought everybody together and we demonstrated how these dinners, I got to go to a number of them. They were great. I suggest everybody go to them. Happy to say we relaunched West Virginia Grown program before the COVID hit. And we're about ready to have a new directory of producers that are members of West Virginia Grown go out. So producers and buyers can then connect. Currently, we run the state. There's 2 inspection systems in the state of West Virginia for meat processing, USDA and state inspected. Federal government matches what the state puts in on the state inspected side. During the pandemic, we hired more inspectors than we normally were allowed. We found savings elsewhere and we hired inspectors to go in to help alleviate some of that backlog that was created by all the hogs and additional animals coming into West Virginia. But at the same time, we've been working and having the conversations with the Commerce Department on funding. And currently, we have 3 that I know of right now, and there's a lot more under discussion, but we have 3 meat processing facilities getting ready to come online within the next year. So that's going to help with what we're seeing as that locally grown. And then with our branding method of West Virginia Grown, people are going to be able to go to the shelves and say, that is West Virginia Grown, certified by the Department of Agriculture, and I'm going to pay a little bit for that, more for that, and that's going to give us the advantage over those meats that are coming in, because people want to support West Virginians.
Gotcha. Great. So, so those of you that are watching at home, we will take questions. If you want to, you post something, we'll look at that question. And we have one now. And Kent, this is you. Bob mentioned earlier food insecurity. And it's a big issue. I mean, food deserts in our state, I think maybe the whole state's a desert, and certainly it is in our area here. And the question to you would be, what plans do you have to address food insecurity in communities like here in Grafton? Kent, that's to you.
Is that to me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've been working on that. Fortunately, President Trump worked on helping the farmers around the country in purchasing commodity foods during the trade wars that we've had. So we've been able to bring in about $24 million worth of food. A lot of it's already been distributed, that has come in and distributed to the 2 food banks. These are programs that are administered by the Department of Agriculture. And we go in and we negotiate with USDA, bring the foods in, and we get it out to the food banks. Those 2 food banks then redistribute it out to the food pantries throughout the area. One of the things that we've recognized as a shortage is the lack of cooler space down at the local area. And I've already been in discussions with the governor on how do we use some of the funding that's now available, maybe through the CARES Act, to get more coolers. And the governor also announced that he was going to put $1 million towards helping the food banks at a State of the State address last year. That money was recently released to the food banks. So both food banks have expanded their operations. They've expanded their warehouse spacing. The one in Weston has doubled, and the one in Huntington has actually gone up into the Nitro area, utilizing some National Guard space. So we've already started that expansion and implementing those plans. The next step is to get the money for the coolers into the regional areas. That will also save on trucking. We did with our food distribution program for the schools, and we're doing it we actually teamed up with the students at WVU and asked them to do a study on how we can best utilize the transportation assets within the Department of Agriculture for greater distribution. And those ideas are actually being implemented as we speak.
Great. So Bob, I think your comment about it may have tipped off our viewer to ask about it. You got anything to add on food insecurity?
Yeah, well, the fact is that ignores the whole grow local and grow and buy local. Growing local, let's just face it, and buying local supports the local economy. And that would certainly help in these food deserts. Communications is also a tool that should never be overlooked. That should be the #1 tool that's brought to the table. In Clay County this past, well, maybe it's been 2 years ago, they were without a grocery store in the whole county. There was communications between the county commissioners there and other local individuals who were able to encourage another grocery store owner from another county to reinvest in Clay County, actually in the community in Clay, and reopen one of the grocery stores there. So that helped a lot. But then going back to the grow local and working with a local development there, Greenbrier County is an excellent example of how the farmers market there and the director there has been able to really establish a program of her own, working with the county commission and others, to purchase local and move a van into the area where these foods are needed. Because they're in the northern part of Greenbrier County, the only thing they have is a Dollar General or something like that. And those, of course, that's not the healthy foods. That's just canned goods and frozen goods in some cases. We want to get as much fresh foods into these folks as we can. There's no reason that we should have to be relying on fresh materials all the time. It's great. It's great as a backup. But when there's an option and an opportunity to go fresh, let's go fresh.
Yeah, it makes sense. And one of the things we're trying here at Unleash Tiger through our Unleash Health program is, one is the supply, the other is the demand. There has to be the demand, and people have to want these foods, and that's a real challenge on everybody's plate.
Yeah, you just give them a truckload full of rutabagas, which I've seen that happen here in the state of West Virginia here in the past. Yeah,
it's tough. So I've got this next question has lots. It's more. There's lots of confusion around this, and I hate to even combine these two topics because they so get overlapped. But I want to talk about hemp and cannabis. And Bob, this question's to you to start. I've been told through the years by folks who are way smarter than me in this area, and you gentlemen can help me out here, that our climate, our ecosystem here in parts of West Virginia are ideal for growing hemp. and likewise for growing cannabis. Is that accurate? And if so, can you help kind of explore what kind of, and I know, there's not public policy necessarily, but certainly this position influences public policy within our state's leaders and those things. Could you just help me kind of where you are on this and help explain to viewers, is that realistic? Is that something we should be pursuing as a state?
Alex, it definitely is realistic. It's one of those plants that have so many quality properties to it. It's just amazing. We've done roundtable discussions with hemp farmers here in the past year in Greenbrier and Summers and others. And I have many friends who are participating in the hemp program right now. It's a fantastic opportunity for West Virginia, but there's a lot of education needs to take place. That's something the legislature may have missed early on, not having an education component on the front end of it. But hemp itself has what we call wonderful mopping properties. And if you apply it to areas that are weak soils, like a banded strip mine or whatever it may be, it has the ability to extract a lot of those impurities that you don't want in the soil. And at the same time, after you've removed it from the land, what's left, you can, obviously till back into the soil and just continue to improve the soil for other development. But yeah, that's the darling of the future, not just for West Virginia, but on a regional basis, especially Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina. If we can have the opportunity to open the doors and start talking with each other, we talk about CBD oils all the time. And that's why everyone jumped into it immediately. It looked like that get rich thing. Unfortunately, we went from $62 a pound down to roughly 16. I've heard other stories where it fell to 6. So we need to do a better job of that. But the long-term gains for West Virginia is in the plant itself, in the fiber itself, and what we can do with it in regard to textiles and plastics. That's an opportunity that we need to explore further, but it's going to take an infrastructure that we don't have here in West Virginia yet. And again, we go back to communication. We know we need more than 4 processors to make this happen. We need to find out what each state's needs are. If we're working across borders, does one state want to work with textiles? West Virginia and North Carolina have been very good with textiles in past years. Kentucky is already working with GM in regards to plastics. So we need to be sharing this fibrous material, and each one take a little niche and work from there. But yeah, we have a lot of opportunity here. Then, of course, medical cannabis. And at some point in the future, we will be deregulating the use of cannabis across the country, if not here in the state of West Virginia. And at that time, if I'm assuming that I'm Commissioner of Agriculture and the job's given to me, I will definitely manage it in the proper manner, not drag my feet.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And Kent, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to add to that. Again, we've got the separation between hemp and cannabis, and probably there's worth some talking about that. And I do want to go back to hemp, but I want to add to the cannabis what Bob said. Many folks have expressed to us that, and this is a pessimistic view, but in true West Virginia style, we're going to wait till everybody else legalizes marijuana, and then we're going to do it and not be able to make money on it. Can you explore some of that and what you're seeing at the state level and what you would like to see from your commissioner position if you're reelected?
Okay, I'd like to address the hemp a little bit first, if that's okay, because they're all 3 right now, and they're not connected, yet in the minds of some of the citizens, they're connected. Right. Hemp is now a legal product at the federal level as well as the state level. So I'm very proud of what we did. We took a very proactive role in hemp at the Department of Agriculture. When I took office, there were 28 growers only, and there was no testing equipment at the Department of Ag. There was no infrastructure other than issuing licenses and growing. So when I took office, we saw that shortfall. So we got chemists trained, we got equipment on board. We now have, under the 2014 Farm Bill, we issued over 300 licenses in just 3 years, from 28 to 300 licenses. Now, this next year would be the first year under the 2018 Farm Bill that we would start issuing licenses. So we're very proud. We've took a very proactive. We had some problems with the federal government as well. We had a U.S. attorney that wanted to shut a hemp farmer down, and he wanted me to take his license away. I refused to do it. I stood up to the U.S. attorney, and we ended up doing very well. And the judge saw that we were right, threw the case out. I get along with the U.S. attorney now, but I did have to stand the ground for the hemp farmers in West Virginia. Without the Department of Agriculture and the proactive stance we took, there wouldn't be a hemp industry. Now, the medical side of thing, I'm a little bit concerned of. Much to my chagrin and my opposition, I was taken completely out of the medical cannabis. Department of Agriculture was. There was people that wanted to privatize everything, and right now you can see how far behind we are on medical cannabis. I recommended that Department of Agriculture have a greater role, but the legislature chose not to give the Department of Agriculture a greater role. Hopefully that'll change as they've seen things going on down the road. As far as recreational marijuana, the citizens of West Virginia with our dangerous jobs, when I do the polling and talk, there's no doubt that someday it will probably be legalized, but the majority of citizens that talk to me, they say, we don't want it legalized yet. But that, again, I'm not the legislature. I don't make the laws. I just enact what the legislature asked me to do.
Gotcha. So let's shift gears a little bit. And Kent, this question will be to you in terms of getting into kind of that climate change and water resource, saving our resources and making sure we're taking care of our future generations. Water is a critical resource, we all know. And it's all the way around the world, and certainly here in West Virginia. And many of us remember many of the orange streams through mining and those things. And so what are we doing in the Commissioner of Agriculture Department to take a look at how we're managing farms and water and streams, at the same time balancing the individual rights of property owners who maybe have a pond or a stream on their property? Help us, guide us through what you've done in your administration and what you would plan to do so that we can honor our natural resources in our future, while at the same time honoring those property rights and those individuals.
You're absolutely correct. There is that balance, and West Virginia is blessed with some of the finest natural resources on God's given earth. You know, we've got water resources, we've got beautiful mountains, and we've got great soil. So number one thing that I did, and we were the first state to do it, it was an initiative of myself and my department. We signed a historic agreement with the Environmental Protection Agency on cooperation. No other state had done that, and it's become a model. At that signing, at the table, was not only myself, but the West Virginia Farm Bureau, the EPA, the Department of Environmental Protection, and NGOs like West Virginia's Rivers Coalition. They were all at the table in support of this historic agreement. Now, 4 other states have also modeled that agreement in the Chesapeake Bay area. So I'm very proud of that initiative that we took for the national level, because our streams are interconnected. You know, half of our state flows into the Ohio River Basin, the other half of the state flows into the Chesapeake Bay drainage. You know, and West Virginia is the only state meeting the 2025 goals of the Chesapeake Bay restoration, and we're doing it voluntarily. So I'm very proud of the farmers. But we also, as part of the Department of Agriculture, we do a lot of water testing out of our Moorfield laboratories. We do that on a regular basis to make sure we're moving in the right direction. We're making sure the good agricultural practices are being in place. And we've also increased to over 93,000 acres under nutrient management planning at the Department of Agriculture. And we run that program. We actually help the farmers say, this is what you should and should not put on your land, so they only use what they need. And that way they are not wasting their money on their valuable fertilizer or poultry manure that is valuable. They're only putting on what they need. And so that's less runoff into our streams and rivers. So Department of Agriculture, we've been very proactive. We know conservation pays, and I'm proud to chair the State Conservation Committee that overlooks a lot of these programs, as well as what we do within the Department of Agriculture.
Great. So obviously we talked about water. Bob, I'd like to add to that, what other things that may be considerations of climate change, other things, either opportunities or challenges for West Virginia, as we look at that balance between how do we take care of this beautiful place we have, while at the same time honoring individual rights and the economics of it.
Oh, Alex, it is a wonderful state, and tourism and what we have to offer folks who come to West Virginia is second to none. West Virginia, I've been at this for 20 years as a state senator, and I've probably, 10 years in the Senate, 10 years in the House. And I've probably seen, goodness gracious, I don't know how many water quality pieces of legislation come through. My opponent mentioned the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It wasn't totally voluntary. Actually, it required a piece of legislation to get us involved. And that was a piece of legislation I co-sponsored, but it was sponsored by then Senator Herb Snyder, who is a resident of the Eastern Panhandle. And Herb's a very focused on water quality. That's his job, and he has a business. It's around water quality and testing there in the Eastern Panhandle. So we were unique to have him on our side of the aisle, so to speak, because he walked us through a lot of legislation over the years and what the impact would be to particularly the Chesapeake watershed system. So it's it's very effective to have someone in your own group to help you along. But there are things that we need to, as individuals, to take responsibility for. Just around your home or your farm, not allowing things to sit out and the bottom of the gas can rust away, and that fuel get into the water system. So there's just taking a personal responsibility is where you start first, and then hopefully you're leading by example, and your neighbors say, okay, Bob's doing a pretty good job at this, then maybe we should be watching this as well. But again, we have to police ourselves. And it begins at home.
Yeah. So Bob, I want to stick with you on this. This is our last major topical area before we wrap up tonight. And this is so many states and many farmers are taking advantage of the agritourism, whether it's winery areas or cheese circuits or whatever it may be. And so when we look at West Virginia and the pockets of different topography that we have here, I know there's some businesses doing this in West Virginia, but how can we take advantage of that movement and those tourism dollars? We've got lots of tourism going on in the state. How can we take advantage from an agritourism standpoint?
Well, we might take a page from the playbook of Virginia. They incorporated their agritourism in with tourism, and it's grown by millions of dollars already. But West Virginia should start focusing on some things that we know that we can do well here. We could get into the vineyard business just like Virginia. We could definitely get into the hop business, which North Carolina is doing a lot with right now, and establishing breweries. And brewery tours and distillery tours are a form of agribusiness. Kentucky does a fantastic job. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let's just look around what's going on in other states, and let's bring it here to West Virginia. But yeah, vineyards, breweries, agribusiness. I've toured several tourism agribusiness operations, one over in the Eastern Panhandle, and in a single day, they had 6,500 children come through there from Oakland, from Cumberland, Maryland. And it's the corn maze, it's the wedding venues, the conference venues, the pumpkin patch. It's just a wonderful experience for families, the entire family, from the kids up to the folks who are getting married. So yeah, there's more of that going on. Greenbrier County is a very effective one there in Greenbrier County. That includes a haunted house. I just think we need to open that door. We have the West Virginia State Farm there in Mason County, I believe. They've been around forever, and we want to promote those folks and make sure they keep their doors open. And we want to let folks know the culture of West Virginia. And I think that's something else we need to focus on. I've lived here all my life. The culture here in West Virginia is unique, and we need to expose that to other people outside our boundaries, outside our borders, because it's rich. It's very rich in what it can offer. People of West Virginia are just fantastic people, and I love going up and down these mountains and meeting with as many people as I can.
Yeah, I would agree. Kent, do you have anything to add on agritourism and what we might be able to do, or what you plan to do if you're reelected as commissioner to pump that up here in the state?
Yeah, agritourism is growing in West Virginia. Within the legislature, sponsored by Senator Rucker over in the Eastern Panhandle, she promoted an agritourism bill, which the Department of Agriculture got fully behind, and it passed, thankfully. And I appreciate all the senators and House members that voted for that. And that kind of helped unleash some of the regulations and the liabilities for agritourism on the farmers so they could make that transition. That was step one. We've just hired somebody within the Department of Agriculture with the title of agritourism liaison. And we've actually sat down, myself, Secretary Gaunch of Commerce, Chelsea Ruby, myself, and their points of contacts to start merging that agritourism. We've already begun that. Speaking of the State Farm, recently we just had the Board of Public Works approve a deed transfer, and I signed the deed. We're waiting on the Corps of Engineers now for a piece of property that was an ammunition site. I wanted to make sure, it took a little while, but I wanted to make sure West Virginia wasn't biting off something that they'd have to pay to clean up later on. So there's no liability to the state of West Virginia now. And that property, and all the paperwork's in order, is going to be used solely for the benefit of that State Farm Museum. So the State Farm Museum is going to have an economic bump without having to go through tax dollars to get there. So we're working on those things to continue to promote the agricultural heritage of the state. We've got fairs and festivals that unfortunately we didn't get to have this past year. The state fair the year before, we had record numbers of people coming in, from the last few years. People started coming into the board. I've worked with the board to change the venue so we can promote what West Virginia has to offer. The country store, our first year in office, we doubled the food products in the state of West Virginia that are made homegrown by heroes and West Virginia grown products. We doubled the sales in the West Virginia store at the state fair the first year, and it's grown ever since. So we're doing all those type of things right now to promote agritourism. Very proud of what the staff has done.
Excellent. Kent, to you, we've got a Facebook question. In terms of the invasive species and plants and bugs and things that come from outside areas into here and really impact our farmers and landowners. What are you planning to do with, or maybe currently doing in the commissioner's office to either preventative moments or take care of some of these invasive species, whether they be bugs, plants, whatnot that's coming in?
Well, we have a whole division already on the lookout. Unfortunately, the emerald ash borer nationally went through the entire state. It went through and that was before I took office. Our biggest threat right now, well, we do manage the gypsy moth program, and we've kept the gypsy moth under control since I've been in office. It's been under control. We have the spotted lanternfly, and we've hired a spotted lanternfly coordinator who has her PhD in studying it. We've spotted the spotted lanternfly twice. We've been able to destroy those colonies, but we're also working on cooperative agreements with USDA and the U.S. Forest Service to eradicate the tree of heaven in those growth paths. The tree of heaven is another invasive species that's been throughout West Virginia, and it is a host to the spotted lanternfly. So we're working on eradication of the tree of heaven for that, stopping that growth path. So we've got a lot of great things going on with invasive species. We just approved a temporary plan and it's going to be voted on by the State Conservation Committee for plant invasive species that we're going to be able to use some programs to increase things like Himalayan blackberry and other plants that for pasture management. These are all good conservation practices. It's going to include mechanical control. WVU is working with us on how best to control species as they come in. And that program will be voted on by the State Conservation Committee at their next quarterly meeting in January. I expect it to pass overwhelmingly. And then the conservation districts will then make their decision to adopt that program. And then the cost share funds will go out and we'll be able to help farmers with the invasive species on their plants. And while the Department of Agriculture will continue to work with them on the invasive insect species. And most people don't realize the Department of Ag does the phytosanitary inspections of the export of logs and rough sawed lumber. So we go in and we look at these before they depart to make sure there's no invasive species, that we're not spreading it to others. And since I've been in office, we have not had any transmission.
Yeah, perfect. So Bob, I think I just saw either today or yesterday or some point, the state of Washington got a murder hornet nest and was able to a colony and take that out of there. I mean, there's a lot of invasive species, whether it be plants or bugs. What is it that you're planning to do if you're elected to protect the crops and landowners' property?
Well, there's not really a lot I can add because each state across the United States is facing some type of problem along these lines. And it's really just a matter of working with the USDA, open communication. I can't preach that enough. And having folks sit at the table and just explore your options. But of course, it requires notification and being on top of these things when they arrive in the state at some point and catching them and eradicating the problem as quickly as possible.
Perfect. So Bob, let's pull way out to that 30,000 foot view. And let me ask you this. If the voters of West Virginia decide to put you in as our next Commissioner of Agriculture, what is it you'd like, if we sat down here 4 years from now and what is the number one outcome? Again, there's a lot going on, lots of things you want to do, and I get all that, but what's the number one outcome that you'd like to say, this is an outcome we accomplished in my time as a Commissioner of Agriculture?
Number one is gross domestic output here in the state of West Virginia. It has to go up. We're only about 2% of the total package. West Virginia can do much better than that, and it requires some forethought. We need to get the dairy herds back on track. We need to focus on output in regards to hemp and what we're producing there, not just on license, but what's coming out on the other end, and the income that's being made there. Because gross income receipts across the state of West Virginia has fallen. We need to fix that. And it just requires, again, I can't say it enough, communication, resources, and some education in some matters. But number one, we want to increase advocacy for the farmers out there, not for the Department of Agriculture. There's a lot of stories to be shared. We want to get those out there. That's what's going to grow business here in West Virginia. It's going to make us more attractive as long as these stories start being forefront and we start sharing that. But yeah, we want to increase gross domestic income here in the state of West Virginia. That's job one if we're ever going to grow our state of West Virginia in the Department of Agriculture.
Great. Kent, that 30,000-foot view, what's that one outcome you'd like to be just trumpeting from the rooftops in 4 years?
Yeah, I want to just make sure we continue on the path that we're going, because we are having a growth in agriculture. USDA said we had 5,000 more cows in West Virginia in 2019, at the start of 2020 than the start of 2019. I visited a Mahindra tractor, brand new dealership in West Virginia. Nobody's going to make that kind of millions of dollars of investment in a tractor dealership in West Virginia if West Virginia agriculture wasn't doing great. I recently visited an auction barn over in Jefferson County, and that barn, the owner that was running that auction barn was operating out of Maryland. He moved it back into West Virginia. We want to make sure that we continue that path of growth, of educate before regulate. We want to make sure that the programs that we've initiated in the first 4 years continue and strengthen and we tweak. So I believe my 30,000-foot level is we're going to see growth in agriculture in West Virginia, just like we are already seeing it. And I look so much forward to watching that growth happen. It's just, it's heartwarming to see it when somebody comes up to me and says, Mr. Leonhardt, because of you, I was able to quit my job and keep farming. When I get those type of comments, it's very heartwarming. And I hear it more than once. The Farm Bureau's endorsed me, the Chamber of Commerce has endorsed me. These are pro-agribusinesses organizations, and they want to make sure that we keep on the path that we're going. And I think we're doing great. And we want to have some more specialty crops. We're exporting out of West Virginia mushrooms now. We've got lavender coming on board with processing of lavender. We want to make sure we have that cornucopia of specialty crops, that high dollar, high value crop, because we are 1 day's drive from 60% of the population of the United States. And actually the final end is that we have a lot of different various agribusinesses. Our eggs aren't all in one basket, so to speak. That's an ag joke. That we have multiple avenues for resiliency, and that people can take something and find a niche that they really love to do and really enjoy the work they do. Because I love watching farmers in West Virginia enjoying their work. And that is a big enough reward for me to make sure West Virginia has a place that my grandkids can come home to.
All right, gentlemen, we're on the home stretch. This is the last question. As is customary on this program, we offer you the last word. And so, Kent, you're up first. What is it you'd like to tell the voters of the state of West Virginia?
Well, voters, I'm going to ask you for your vote. I believe I've earned that second time around, so to speak. People should know that I'm a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Marine Corps. I led men and women in peace and war for over 20 years. I served in the state legislature, so I know how that program works. But one of my greatest jobs in the Marine Corps was being a fellow to the director of the National Security Agency, followed by the Marine Corps' liaison officer. And I also did coordination with all 4 services. So when we talk about communications and working together, in many, many operations, I've been able to bring all 4 branches of service together to accomplish a mission. It's the same way we do in state government. We're bringing commerce together. We're bringing weights and measures together. We're bringing the forestry division together to accomplish the mission for a better West Virginia. And that's what I promise and pledge to the voters of West Virginia. I will continue that dialogue. I will continue strengthening West Virginia government, and I will continue to do it fiscally responsible. Because right now I am operating the Department of Agriculture on dollars similar to what the commissioner received from the state budget in 2012. That's good government, and I want to continue on that path.
Great. Bob, what is it you'd like to leave the voters with?
Thank you, Alex. Well, ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening or going to listen later on. I want you to know I'm applying for Commissioner of Agriculture because I have 54 years of active agricultural experience here in the state of West Virginia. I was raised on an 800-acre cattle farm in north of Morgantown here. My father taught ag sciences in the school system for 35 years and instilled a deep respect and appreciation for agriculture here in West Virginia and farming. And those are two different issues, agriculture and farming. Farming is a minute focus, agriculture is a broader picture. I forego the next step of going into an education field. I went to school later on in life. I actually left home and then became a meat cutter, merchandiser, manager, supervisor, and a meat commodities buyer, which brings the strong part of my management to the plate, so to speak. And also food safety and food security was all part of that for those 24 years. I spent 20 years in the legislature, 10 of those in the House of Delegates, where I was also agriculture commissioner. So commissioner, agriculture chairman. So there's not probably a time in my life that I don't recall being connected to agriculture. I've remained close to it my entire life. We have those skill sets that the Department of Agriculture needs. We have a plan in place. You can visit that at beach4wv.com. We're going to tackle the problem we have with dairy. We're going to tackle the problems we have with hemp. We're going to put greenhouses in the schools, and those things are all laid out there. And we're just asking for the opportunity to move forward and bring our plan into place. I have a collective team around me right now who are agricultural people who understand various elements and specialties within agriculture. And we're excited to put those guys in the field and working there within the Department of Agriculture to grow agriculture here in the state of West Virginia. So it's going to be an exciting 4 years once I'm in office. We have a transition team ready to go, and we have a permanent team ready to go. And we're going to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to talk about agriculture, and we're going to make agriculture sexy again. It's not just a hobby; it's a career. And as I said earlier in my opening remarks, it's a STEM pathway, and we have to always keep focused on STEM pathways.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of those who joined us live and those who asked questions. And I want to thank you for, if you're watching this recorded later, thank you for being an informed voter. Thank you for voting, but thank you for being an informed voter. That is the magic that makes this representative republic work. And gentlemen, to Kent Leonhardt and Bob Beach, I want to thank you both for putting yourselves out there in public office and for coming on this program and sharing with the voters who you are and what you're about. So thank you, gentlemen, and good luck on the race.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.